Hi, everybody. Great. Thank you for having me. You know, light painting is one of the things that I really enjoy doing because, as we know, photography is all about light. No light, no image. And so uh, I really enjoy finding ways to add light to things and seeing how I can make things look a little bit different. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Once I do that, I won't be able to see chat. So Rob, if you can monitor the chat and holler at me if anybody wants to say anything to me.
Not a problem.
Let me go ahead and share screen. Desktop 2. Okay, hopefully you're, oops, there we go. Hopefully you're seeing light painting by slide. If not, somebody scream at me.
We can see it.
Okay, no screaming, then we'll proceed. So, maybe, there we go. So I can think of nothing more exciting than photographing a sneaker sitting on a pizza box. Well, maybe. It could be a little more glamorous if you're jammed in a closet and you use a raincoat as a backdrop. But, you know, what could be more fun than that? But the pictures coming out of that could be pretty dull, but it all depends on the light. So when you put the right light on something, a boring subject can look pretty nice. So, you know, I'm get kind of excited by power tools too, but making images of them can be pretty dull if you're just using whatever existing light happens to be there. But when you break out a flashlight and use the flashlight to light up the subject and the background a little bit, it becomes a little more interesting. Same thing with wooden spoons. You know, just sitting there in a bowl, not too exciting, but with some proper lighting, it comes to life. And so, as with most photos, light is the key. And to light these, I use a very small flashlight. I'll show you my arsenal later, but I'm doing a long exposure, and during that exposure, I'm moving the light all around all the time. So I'm in total darkness doing these. I've covered my windows so I can do a long exposure. That's why I'm shooting basically in a closet, so I can get the room pretty dark. So this one I shot at f20, ISO 100, and my shutter was open for 30 seconds. And so any one part of the scene or is getting maybe 2 or 3 seconds of light. So I'm changing the angle of the light, I'm changing the location of the light, I'm moving it left, I'm moving it low, I'm moving it right, I'm moving it up, I'm moving it down, just giving it all over. And my goal is not to totally illuminate what I'm lighting, it's to illuminate only parts of it. So I create shadows. Shadows create drama and a unique look. So something pretty simple. Just I pulled some. I'm up in Vermont, so I pulled some maple syrup bottles out of the cabinet, set them on a bench, and I have this lovely, lovely wallpaper on the wall there here in my closet. But when I turn out the lights and get out the flashlight, then it becomes something more special. So I'm painting with light, much like you'd paint with a paintbrush, except with a paintbrush, your goal is to spread it out evenly. My goal with the light is to use just a pinpoint source of light and move it around and create highlights and create shadows. And the more interesting you can make the highlights and the shadows, the more dramatic, the more, I think, interesting the photo looks. So you can even start out with something that looks pretty good to start with, but when you change the light, then it becomes something special. And so for these, I'm using just a little pen light flashlight. I'll show you what they look like here in a second. And just a little pen light that takes 2 AAA batteries, doesn't put out much light. But even with a pen light battery or a pen light flashlight, the beam is too broad to do this. So I make this really fancy snout for it. And it's very high tech. I wrap aluminum foil around the end of it, so I keep the light from spreading out. So the smaller the hole, the more defined the light is, right? So what I'm really trying to do is put just a very focused beam of light. So you can see on the sneaker, there's just this little spot of light. And so with it being that tight, that little bit of a spot, as I move it around, I can really control where the light's going. And most of the time I'm holding the light about 6 inches away from the subject, and I'm moving it. The farther you move it away, the more broad the beam becomes, the less effective if you're going for the dramatic lighting, the farther away it becomes more even. So one of the tricks that I try is I'll stick a pen inside my little pen light flashlight and then wrap the foil around that. And when I pull the pen out, I have a nice snoot. It stays nice and round. When I'm feeling really fancy, I get out a drinking straw, just a regular plastic straw, although you can't find them in Vermont anymore, and wrap foil around it. And this one I got really fancy and put some black gaffer tape on the end of it to keep that light from leaking out at all. So if your flashlight's going to get in the shot at all and have some light hitting it, you may want to wrap it entirely with black gaffer tape so it won't show up at all. But if you keep the light out of the shot, you don't have to worry about it. And so by keeping that beam really tight, I'm able to control the light, so even these simple flower shots become something special. And one of the hard parts is, how do you figure out what the exposure is? Well, it's like lick your finger and hold it up in the wind. Who knows? It's trial and error. So this is an old filing cabinet I have. Looks boring as hell in normal light, but by putting flowing light onto it, I can just control what I'm doing, and I'll shoot. I probably shot 30 shots, and every one of them looks different. Every one is lighted in different places, different. And so in this case, since the wood was so dark, it really just sucked up the light. So I stuck my camera on bulb and locked the shutter open, and I'm working in the dark. And so this is about a 2-minute exposure. And I'm just slowly moving the light up and down, moving it around the side, getting different angles on it. And, you get pretty, it doesn't take much practice to see that, okay, I painted that pretty nicely. And I intentionally put some spots brighter than other spots, so it has that bit of a dramatic look to it. But as you play with this, it's really easy to do, and you quickly see how long you need to hold that light on a certain spot to get the proper exposure. I always shoot at ISO 100, and I usually shoot at f16, f22. It depends what I'm shooting, so I have plenty of depth of field. And then it's a matter, how long the shutter is open. If you're in the dark, just doesn't matter at all. I leave the shutter open as long as it takes me to paint the light across the object. So shutter speed is not a factor at all. It's how far away the light is from the subject and how long you hold that light on any one certain spot, which is why I keep it moving, so I can keep it smooth. So you don't have to do real dramatic light every time. I like the feel of this one, but I study light. When I'm driving, I'm watching light. When I'm watching TV, I'm watching how they lit it. And so Shadows give the clues to where the light is coming from, what direction that light is coming from. But you look at this one, it just doesn't make any sense because you have a shadow to the right of the lock, which means the light had to be coming from the left side, but underneath this old broom that I had, the light is falling from top to bottom there. So it can't be one light doing that because one light can't be coming from the left and coming from the right and coming from the top at the same time. So it's like, well, what's going on here? So, you know, when I see a photo like this, I'm breaking down the light in my mind constantly. I have been for 40 years. And you know, it's like, okay, this light is coming from multiple directions at the same time. That just can't happen. So it has to be shot in the dark and done with light painting. So it takes some practice, it takes some patience, and you know, immediately you see when you're looking at the back of your camera whether you lit one area too much or not enough, and you can try it again, and you can try it again, and you can even it out, and then, you know, it doesn't have to be streaky. But even, you know, something fairly normal like this clock, by adding a few highlights, it really brings out the details. So in this one, I tried to have my light as high as possible. So I'm shooting down a lot, which lit, you know, put the nice rim light, the highlights on the edges of it, and then put a little light really quick on the face of the clock, and then a little on the base of it, and then some on just a plain plywood background. This was in my garage. So having that light coming from multiple directions just really creates a unique look that you just can't get any other way. You just, you know, it's just, you know, it's just so unique looking. Any questions up to this point? Okay, we'll move on. Yes? Okay. So, you know, these shots have all been done in the dark, and in doing light painting does require some darkness. So you can do bigger things, obviously, too, with light painting. You just need a bigger flashlight. So this is a lighthouse up in Maine, Bass Harbor Lighthouse, and it is totally dark out there except for the red in the lighthouse, you know, the light of the lighthouse. So again, I'm at ISO 100, and this is a 30-second exposure. And so, you know, one thing I've learned is I always have a headlamp in my camera bag. It is as important to me as about anything else. Is, you know, I have a camera in there, number one, then number two is my headlamp. Because I was doing a workshop up in Acadia National Park, and I took the group out on these rocks, and to get down here, you're scrambling across some pretty nasty rocks. And there was a young couple out there, and the woman had a little flimsy camera, and I just started talking with them, and they're from China and didn't speak a whole lot of English. But I told her, you know, stick around till the sun goes down, because I'm going to light this baby up, and I'm going to be shouting out the exposure to everybody. So you're welcome to use my light, because I'm going to make this look pretty special. So it got dark, and we were making pictures, and before it got dark, the man who wasn't taking pictures got up and climbed back up the rocks and went up top. She hung around for a while, but it was dark out, you know, and so I saw her get up to leave, and I noticed she didn't have a flashlight, and I'm like, oh, really? So I stand up and I hold my flashlight up for her to give her light to climb across these rocks to get out of there. And suddenly she disappears, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So I scramble over and shine my light down, and she's laying down in this crevice between these jagged rocks, and blood's coming out of her forehead. And it's like, oh, no, really? And the guy had seen this happen and came back down, and he asked, where's the nearest hospital? I said, you know, it's like 30 miles away. So I asked, you know, 911, and he says, yeah. So I kind of gave her a concussion protocol and made sure she was steady, but you know, they're holding her, keeping her head from bleeding out, and they made it up. And when we left about 45 minutes later, there wasn't a pool of blood, and they weren't there, so she must have survived. But if you're going out and shooting in the dark, take a flashlight with you so you can get out. So this one is, again, just a 30-second exposure. And during that time, just like the indoor shots, I'm lighting, moving my light, moving it all around. I can't move side to side much because it's pitch black out there and I'm on jagged rocks. But I'm holding it up and moving it as much as I can and just trying to keep a nice even light going. So when you're lighting something like rocks, which are dark, you have to put the light on it much longer than you do the lighthouse, which is white, right? Doesn't take much to hit that lighthouse, but you know, maybe a second or two up on the lighthouse, and then the rocks, you know, really pouring the light into that. And I'll show you later what flashlights I use for this. But just like the small items, I'm not looking to illuminate the whole scene. I just want to add some drama and depth to the shoot, to the shot. So, you know, I could have lit the ground all around this and everything, but I just wanted this carousel lit up. So I just did my light painting, moving my light up and down, moving it all around on the carousel to get that right exposure. And then just gave it a touch of light, just a flicker of light back there on the arcade, because I didn't want that to be nearly as bright as the carousel, but I wanted that to show somewhat. So this is shot with like a 35mm lens, and again, 30 seconds. And you can see the moon has become oblong because it was moving that much during my 30-second exposure. But I needed that amount of time to keep the blue in the sky. So that is, you know, how I figure it out. And we'll talk more about how to figure out your exposure. But again, this is a 30-second exposure. So I did some light painting from the left side, then ran around to the right in the dark to get light coming from a different direction so I could have multi-direction light. And I had to do it way too many times, and I'm too old to be running in the dark through fields out in the Vermont barnyard. But I survived, and the picture looked pretty cool. I love the movement of the clouds during that exposure. There's a pretty bright moon that night. But having that light coming from multiple directions is key. So my workhorse is my Stanley Fat Max. I take this baby with me everywhere, and there's links to it on my website on lorenphotos.com/gear. So all the gear weird gear, I don't list all my cameras, but weird things that I use, I have there on my gear page. So if you want to link to this. So I modified my Fat Max. I really tricked it out. I put a carabiner on it so I can clip it on my belt or my camera bag, and I took the front lens off, and the light coming from this is a little bit on the cool side, a little bit blue. So I put an orange, a CTO filter, cut out a piece of filter gel, stuck it on there, stuck the lens back on. So now it's a warmer light. So I also like the Nebo Redline Flex 450, which is the little flashlight there. It lets me focus the beam. And so as I do things outdoors, actually that one's too big for most of the stuff I'm doing inside. I use those much smaller ones. But for outside, I can focus the beam and I can get that tight focus, just like I was doing with that fancy tinfoil snout that I was making. So these two are, you know, the Fat Max literally goes with me everywhere I go. You know, if it doesn't fit in my suitcase when I'm traveling, something else gets thrown out. It's going with me. So it just makes for some really nice light. So down in Florida, kicking in some light from the right side under a pier, just making it look a little bit different than the normal silhouette I would have gotten. Again, a 30-second exposure, which is my normal exposure. And the reason I'm doing 30 seconds is that gives me time to light paint everything I need to light. So if I was doing a short exposure here, I wouldn't have time to put my flashlight on every one of those pillars coming down into the water. I'd only be able to hit a couple of them. I want to have as long as exposure as I can. If I'm not doing stars, I can go even longer than 30 seconds. But this one, the sky said 30 seconds at f11, so that's what I got. So many times I need to match the intensity of my flashlight to existing light. So this is the very picturesque town that I live in Somerville, New Jersey. And downtown, there's this pretty cool old fountain, and then this old hotel and the fancy lights on the other building across the street from it. And this is what the existing light looks like. And so I love the scene, but the light's not good until I get my flashlight out. And so, as always, lighting's what makes lighting makes a world of difference. So I lit up this the fountain. I put a little light on the hotel sign across the street, kicked a little light in on the bottom of the hotel, and kicked some light on the upper area of the building on the right. So again, here's the scene without light. So watch what happens. The fountain and the hotel across the street. Boom! Up comes a light, and it just makes a world of difference. So I'm also shooting. I shot this one at f16. One to give me depth of field, but also it gives you that starburst effect. So you can see just to the left of the fountain especially that orange light right there. So any pinpoint source of light will flare out when you shoot at f11, f16. It's actually an aberration in your lens, but we've decided we like that. So a pinpoint source of light like a street light will give you that nice flare. This is a cool library here in Woodstock, Vermont, which is becoming my home now. They light the inside, but the outside is dark. So I need to bring my light out. So this is, again, 30 seconds, and the light painting just makes that huge difference. And just, like this, I'm trying to smooth that light out. So just like painting a wall, I don't throw a bucket of paint at the wall and hope it flows out right, So I'm just moving that light across this the whole time. This one's actually dark enough that I was using two flashlights. I had a friend light half of it, and I lit half of it. So I have two Fat Maxes, so they're the same light, and just shining them both. So just move it back and forth and cover that, and it looks pretty cool. Sometimes it gets a little trickier. This is a beautiful scene in Quechee, Vermont, but lighting-wise, it needs some help. So out comes the flashlight. And again, here I was using both of my Fat Maxes, and I was using both of them at the same time, two-fisted. I felt like Yosemite Sam with flashlights, just shining lights all over the place. And yes, I had to do it a whole bunch of times to get every area right, but it's not that tough. It just takes some practice. So I wanted to make sure I got the waterfalls lit up. I wanted the trees in the background. I wanted the buildings on the right side. I wanted the rocks. So, and then again, a 30-second exposure, f11, and you're getting it. So just like the boring sneaker on the pizza box, a rather mundane scene can become pretty special when you light paint it. So I found this barn out in the hills out here, in Vermont, and thought, that's a cool looking barn, but boy, is that boring. So I waited around and got out the flashlights and actually one flashlight. So I lit up those birch trees in the back, and then the barn and the fence. And so you may notice that most of my pictures are done during the blue hour, which is that time of day about 20 minutes after sunset, and it lasts for about 20 minutes, or 20 minutes before sunrise and the 20 minutes before that, where the sky becomes this rich blue, and it doesn't matter what the weather is. The sky looks that color if it's raining, snowing, clear sky, cloudy sky, no matter what, you're going to get a nice blue hour exposure. And so that I love having, I love shooting during the blue hour, so I have some detail in the sky when I have the sky in a picture. So I do a lot of personal projects, and one of them was the 106 covered bridges of Vermont. And I can tell you, after you've seen about 50 covered bridges, the rest of them all look alike. And so this one was up in the far, far northeast corner of the state, almost in Canada, almost in New Hampshire, and it's about 2.5 hours from my house. And it was cold, and it was just miserable, and I was tired, and I get there, and this bridge is just boring as hell. And it was overcast, and I'm like, oh my God. So I thought, well, I'll just wait around for the blue hour and see what I can do with the blue hour. Well, it was still like, oh, come on, really? So I thought, I've got to do something because I don't want to come back here. And if you know the Connecticut River, which is a massive river at the end, this is up at the top of it. So you can see you can kick a stone across the Connecticut River here. So I thought, well, I'll just add some light. So I have I have a little mag light that I also always carry with me. So I just broke out the mag light, and again, it's just a little light, not even as big as my Fat Max, and just lighted up the end of the bridge where the name was, and waited for cars to come through and let the cars light up the rest of it. So again, 30-second exposure, f11, ISO 100, and waited until the car got there, hit the shutter button, let the car drive through, put a little light on the end of the bridge, and I got my shot, and I was a happy boy, and I didn't have to go back there. The bad part was during blue hour, I think 2 cars came by. So I was like panicking. Oh my God, no cars are going to come through. Now what am I going to do? So one of my favorite subjects is a covered bridge near my house here in Woodstock, Vermont. It's just down the street, walking distance here, right in the heart of town. And I take groups there a lot, and so the end of it is just pitch black. So I light up the fence on the side, I light up the end of the bridge, I do all kinds of stuff. I take groups there, I shoot it a lot, and I aim it. There's a house right beside it on the left, which you can't see in this shot, but I'm popping my light in their windows all the time. And I finally met them. Fortunately, they didn't come out screaming at me, but I apologize for it. I'm the guy who is always shining the flashlight in your windows there. Sorry, I try not to. But I had a group there one night, and the cop came by. So I walked over to talk to him and told him what we were doing, and told him how cool it looked when the cars went through and we did the long exposure and got the trails of the lights. And he said, "Do you want me to turn on my blue lights for you?" I said, "Yes, I do, sir." So he turned around and came through and popped on the lights and lit up everything. And I lit up the end of the bridge, and it turned out to be a pretty cool picture. So we got some blue in there, a little added blue. But my light was doing the end of the bridge and the bush there, and I let him illuminate the house. And so the people didn't come out to yell at me that time either, because the cop was there, so that was good. But they have this picture hanging down in the police station now, so that's a lot of fun. So the key to determine the exposure is figure out what the exposure is for the sky, and then match the intensity of your light, of your flashlight. So for this one, it was well after dark, well after sunset, and the stars were out. So now I'm bumping my ISO. So this is ISO 1600, and I'm shooting it at probably f8 here. And so I wanted to, this little covered bridge is literally out in the middle of a field. It's not over a river. It's not over anything. It's just sitting out in the middle of a field. And so I thought it'd be pretty weird to see just this glowing covered bridge sitting out in the dark. So I wanted to have my flashlight as part of the scene, so it looked like there was a light coming from somewhere hitting the bridge. But if you think about it, if the light's coming from that angle, how's it lighting the right side of the bridge? Well, it really can't. So that's me running around to the side, lighting up the right side, and lighting up the front of it too. But again, it's all about what's the exposure for the sky. So this one was a lavender field in Provence, France. Sky was 30 seconds at f8. So I need to lay down f8 amount of light on the lavender. So rather than me figure out what the, rather than figure out how much light the light's putting out, you set your exposure based on the sky because you want the sky to look good, and then you hold your light on certain areas for however long it takes to make f8 of light. So again, where I'm moving the light all around the field, so any one area is probably only getting 2 seconds of light, or maybe even less. The closer you are to the light, probably less. So the front of it, this was during a workshop in Provence, and we had this Mercedes van rental, and I wanted to get some angle on the light, so I climb up on the roof of the rental, and hear the roof kind of go dunk as it took a nice dip from me standing on it. But I needed to get the angle of the light up high enough that it would reach the back of the field and the front. So the front probably got 1 second of light. The back of the thing, I was getting 8, maybe 10 seconds of light back there just to cover. And you can see it's not perfectly even light, which I like. I don't want it to look like the sun is shining and the sun's going, and the clouds or the sun's down. I just wanted to have that feel of illumination and really make the viewer wonder, where the hell is that light coming from? This is a covered bridge in Pennsylvania, and again, the Stanley Fat Max, and the last one was lit with the Fat Max too. But again, I'm determining my exposure based on the blue hour and what I need for that sky. So in this case, as dark as it was getting, it was ISO 100 at 5.6 for 30 seconds to get the sky to look like that. So I need to put 5.6 amount of light on the bridge. And it's how long is that? I couldn't tell you. When I go back to this bridge, it'll take me 10, 15 shots to get it right. But that's okay. Just moving that light, just seeing what it'll do, what you can get out of it. I usually have some light more than a headlamp in my camera bag. This was during a workshop in Central Park in New York, and on the right is Bow Bridge. There's no light on Bow Bridge, so I was like, oh, I'm digging through my bag, and I'm like, oh crap, my light's not in here. One of the other photographers had a nice little light, so I said, yeah, give me that thing. So we set up, and 30 seconds is my magic number. I don't know why. I mean, one reason why is it's the longest exposure most cameras will do, but a 30 second at f5.6 again, and ISO 100, and just shining that little light, getting some angle on the bridge, just lighting up that bridge just made a world of difference. Otherwise it'd been just a black blob and it wouldn't look like anything. You'd have the two towers and blue sky and that's it. So up to this point, I've shown you photos where my light is the main light, but it works great as a fill light too. So I was shooting this one in Brooklyn and I loved what was going on, but the car on the right was really dark. And I thought, this will look pretty cool getting that. I love the color of it. So I wanted to bring some color out. So I got out my little flashlight and just light painted on the car. The building was lit by street lights, so I didn't have to worry about it. Just lighting up that car a little bit to fill that in, to just accentuate that little bit. And so I'll do fill light a lot. So this was in Venice, and I didn't like how dark the building got down the canal. And I'm thinking, oh, that's kind of cool, but it's not super cool. So I got out my little flashlight and put some light down there on the side of the building, just enough to give it detail. I didn't want it to be my main light. I just wanted it to be a fill light, not too bright, just to accentuate the detail on the side of that building. Now, one of the problems with lighting things is what color light is when you're mixing that light, what color light is the existing light, what color light is your flashlight. So these street lights were really pretty yellow. So my flashlight compared to the street lights looked really blue. So it was putting some very blue light down the on the building. So I do carry some filters with me that I try to filter the light. Of course, I was, in Venice and being a little lazy, and I didn't have my filters in my bag, all of them. So I just had one. But when I shot it, and I thought, oh, this is going to be too blue. But I kind of like the effect of the blue. I think it had a little mystery of where's the blue coming from, and gave it another focal point for the shot. So in this case, it worked out pretty well, I think. But I'll use anything to light up things. This is lit with my iPhone, just the light on my iPhone. And I just wanted a real soft light, and so it spread it out. And so I just walked along and during the 30-second exposure, just let the iPhone kick some light in there. Adding that light has saved my butt a lot of times. I was out in the forest here in Vermont, and I saw this really cool maple leaf that had fallen down between these birch trees. And I was shooting it from every direction, and I was just like, this isn't looking right. And then it hit me. It's the light, dumb butt. So if the light's not good, what are you going to do about it? Well, get out your flashlight, light it up. So it was dark out there. So this is a 4-second exposure, and I got that light angled, and so it's shining across. It's just with that little mag light again. It's just a little. How long is that thing? 4 or 5 inches long light. Doesn't take much, and just giving that directional light. And the more directional it is, the more shadows you create. The more shadows you create, the more detail you have. A lot of people are afraid of shadows, but shadows add detail, depth, and drama to pictures. And I love shadows. That's why I shoot early in the morning, late in the day, so I have those nice long shadows. But just a little bit of light can really make my subject pop. I was shooting this little tree, and I love the roots, but they're blending in with the ground, and the tree was blending in with the background. And I thought, yuck. Okay, get out the flashlight, light her up a little bit. So it was a 5-second exposure was all I had because the background was so bright, and I'm already shooting at ISO 100 and f/16, so there's nothing I can do about it. Excuse me. So I just used my little flashlight and just zipped it down the tree, really, in 5 seconds, right down the tree. Probably a little bit more on the roots on the bottom, and it just made them jump out. Not a killer shot, but one that I would show that I wouldn't show the other one. So it can make a huge difference. You don't always have to blast the scene with light. You can just do a little bit of fill. So this was the first time I went to Iceland, and I shouldn't have said that. I'm going to start crying because I'm supposed to be there right now. Thanks, COVID. So the first time I went to Iceland, I went a day early, and I wanted to go up to this mountain and waterfalls that I'd heard about. And it was about a 3.5-hour drive from Reykjavik. And so I get there, and the flight's overnight, then I get my hotel, and to get up there, sunrise is about 6 o'clock, so I wanted to be there at 5. So I figured I had to leave my hotel at 2:30. Like, why are you doing this? So I leave my hotel at 2:30, which, in our time, I hadn't converted, so I was 5 hours earlier, so I was really leaving at about 9:30. And I get up there, and it's still dark out, and I have my Fat Max, and I'm where I'm supposed to be, and you can see the waterfalls from the road, and I shine my light out, and I'm like, what kind of guy doesn't think about being in northern Iceland in February and the waterfalls, likely to be frozen? So yes, they were frozen. So it's like, oh, come on, really? I did this, drove all the way up here, and wasn't even thinking that the waterfalls would probably be frozen. Well, they were. So I shot it anyway. I stuck around, but I just wanted to kick a little bit of light in there so I didn't overpower the scene. I could have lit up this whole thing, but that wouldn't have felt right. So I just wanted just a touch of light on that frozen waterfall to make it look, make it stand out. Because you can see where the ice behind there that I didn't light up, it was just kind of flat and boring. So to get some shadow on there, just kick in a little bit of light. And here's another shot with the iPhone as the light source. So I hit my shutter, a 30-second exposure, walked up to the bridge with that and turned on the light from the iPhone. And so I'm in the picture, but since there's no light hitting me because it's pitch black out, and I'm not standing between whatever I'm lighting and the camera, I don't show up at all. So I can stand there and light up the bridge with my iPhone, and as I walked back, just put a little bit on the ground to just put a very light light on the dirt road there, and I love what happens. But lots of times I'll be walking in the photos, and when I take groups out and shoot, and they're like, "You're in the picture," and I say, "Wait, you just wait." And then they'll look, and they're like, "You're not in the picture." That's right. I disappear at night. So that's a fun spot. And I like to have some fun with lights. I have these little cube lights that I have a set of, 3 of them, and I have some colored filters on, and I'll stick them inside of things once in a while. I can't decide if I like this one or not, so but I show it anyway. So I had a red light and a blue light, and then the Milky Way climbing up behind it. And of course, I did some without the color lights, but try it, see what it looks like, decide later if you like it. Still haven't decided. I don't know. But this one I liked. So 3 of the little cube lights, and one had an orange gel on it, one had red, and one had blue. So I put blue in the cab of the truck, red up underneath the engine there, and orange in the back, and then used my Fat Max to light up everything. So again, this is in pitch black, can't see your nose, and I love, I always want to try to add, if there's something in the background, I want to add a little light to the background to give it depth. If I don't light up that background, it's just this truck sitting in the black. It's like, wait a minute, there's no context. So if I kick a little light on on that background. So in this shot, I shot it, 30 seconds, surprise, and did some lighting from the right side, moved around to the left side, light it from the left side, and then shining some light actually while I was on the right side on the background to give that extra little bit of depth there. And again, a cool scene, but the moon was lighting the sky, lighting the water. I loved the reflection going on, but it was like, ugh, what's the subject here? The dark blob in the middle. So get out the flashlight, light it up, do something special. I'm always appreciative when somebody drives by and taps their brakes as they're driving. And so I was getting the nice reflection from cars driving by on the road on the right, and kind of looked like fire over there. But this is again ISO 100, 30-second exposure, using that fat max. It's probably down to f5.6, maybe f4 to get the exposure for the sky, and then just shining that light across the trees, and then they reflect nicely in the water. So there are times though when I need to get out my big gun. So I have a little bit bigger flashlight I'll show you here in a second. So I shot this one a few years ago, 3 years ago, and this island's about 250 yards offshore in this reservoir. And I had photographed it, I don't know how many times, dozens of times. And one day it hit me like, why don't you light that baby up? And okay, so I stuck around till after dark. And I have this big flashlight called a Cyclops, which is 18 million candle power. I call it my big ass flashlight. I'll show you here in a second. But again, it's a 30-second exposure, shining that light up and down, going across that island. And, again, any one spot's probably getting 5 seconds of light, and then the reflection's natural. And it's good to have power. So I put in a request for a shooting star, and it came in right on time. So it's always good to have that power in your pocket, and you can use it when you need it. So here's the Cyclops. It's an 18 million candle power beast, and that's my little Nebo beside it that you saw earlier. So it lights up lots of distant things. The bad part is it just doesn't fit in a suitcase. It's a bear to travel with. I've hauled it a couple of times, but it takes up about half the suitcase. So you're carrying extra luggage when you take the Cyclops with you. So once you practice that technique, it's repeatable. So this was last fall with my fall foliage workshop. We lit up the island again, and I liked it even better. So you never know. So every time we do it, it looks a little bit different, but it's a repeatable technique. It's the same indoors as outdoors. Just depends on what size flashlight you use. It takes a lot of light to illuminate a mountainside and a cliff. This one's in Oregon, and I had packed the Cyclops in my suitcase and went out to Oregon. And I'll tell you, I cheated on this one. This is actually 4 different exposures, because in the 30 seconds, and it was like a full moon out, so I had to base my exposure on that sky, and the mountain being dark and pretty far away just really sucked up the light. So in the 30 seconds, no matter what aperture, if I opened up to f2.8, then the sky got too bright, right? So I had to be down at about f8 for 30 seconds to get the sky right, but I couldn't light up enough of the mountain in 30 seconds. So I did one section, then I did another shot, lit up a different section, did another shot, lit a different section. I did several shots, and I missed on the bottom. You can see I didn't get the bottom there. I wish I had a little bit more right in the middle on the bottom, but I missed it, and it's really hard to tell when you're out in the middle of nowhere, in total darkness, trying to figure out what you're doing. But still look pretty cool, and it's real easy to put those together in Photoshop when you have those multiple exposures like that. So I'll use that Cyclops for lots of different things. This is a lighthouse in Cape May, New Jersey, and the street lights light the bottom of it. You can see at the bottom about what's that? Not a third of the way up, a little less, where the color changes of the lighthouse. So the street lights are very yellow there. So they light up the bottom, then I lit up the top with the Cyclops. And I love the dramatic sky and how it looks when you're doing that long exposure and letting that sky move, and which also gives me time to light up the lighthouse. So I'm standing way back with that Cyclops, and it puts out a pretty nice beam. So I was again up in Acadia, and it was an overcast day, and I thought, oh, and I saw this beaver pond that had several beaver hutches in it. I thought, I wonder what happened if I light that baby up. So I went back after sunset and during the blue hour, and used the Cyclops to light up the grass and the beaver hutches, and a beaver swam by. So I put the light on the beaver, and he didn't like that much and smacked his tail and went down. So I got a nice splash from the beaver. Tried not to bother him too much. I don't think he minded a whole lot, but it was pretty fun lighting up that whole pond and then have the beaver do the splash. But again, just a simple 30-second exposure, making the light from the flashlight match the sky. So sometimes I take pictures I can never decide if I like them or not. This is one of them. I was down in Florida photographing some herons and egrets, and they all just maybe 200 of them started coming in right at sunset and landing in these trees across a pond, this lake on the other side. And it's like, wow, that's really cool. And I could see them, but if I exposed for the herons, the sky became brilliant white because it was very dark in there. So I'm thinking, yeah, go get the Cyclops. It's in the car. It's about a quarter-mile hike back to the car, so half-mile round trip. Okay, go get the Cyclops. And so I lit up just part of it, and I thought it was kind of cool with all these white herons and egrets sitting there roosting and getting their reflection, and it's like, well, where the hell did that light come from? It's one of those weird ones. I don't know. It was fun to do, but yeah, you never know. So I mentioned earlier, you got to watch the color temperatures of the lights. So this is a little town in Italy, a little square in the town, and the street lights were pretty yellow. So my Fat Max again looked really blue compared to the street lights. I pulled out some extra gel to put on it, but then I thought I really like this fountain, which was totally dark, looking kind of blue. So I left it looking kind of cool, light on the statue and the fountain, while the rest of the town, had that warm light. So as your color balance for that really yellow light of these street lights makes the sky even bluer, because you're really changing the light, and you're really changing the color of the light. So if it's too yellow to start with, to make it look more normal, you add blue, and that makes the sky even bluer, which really made this one look electric, I thought. So you never know what's going to happen, but it's a lot of fun. Just like the shoe on the pizza box, not too exciting, just standing there. And the same with this tree, and that I shot with the moon shining over it, and again F11 to get that star effect, and light it from the left, light it from the right. Suddenly you've got something looking pretty cool. So I find myself out in cemeteries quite a bit. They're, you know, I don't think it's because I'm weird. I mean, I'm weird, but not because of that. But they're open space, and I'm usually not bothering anybody that I know of while I'm photographing in the cemeteries. And they have some foreground to light up. So I end up shooting in cemeteries a lot. There's one in New Jersey. And again, it's pretty dark out there, so my flashlight's lighting it up. Or, you know, one up there in Vermont with the Milky Way coming across the top. And so you'll notice that my light is rarely coming from the same direction as my camera. So, you know, we're almost always better off having the light not coming over our shoulder. We want it coming in from the sides or coming at us or something else. So I'm rarely lighting it from the same direction that I'm standing. The only time I do is like when I'm out on the rocks on the Bass Harbor Lighthouse. You know, you can't move around there, so you have to do what you have to do. But any other time, I'm stomping through the dark. You know, hit the shutter button, move over 20, 30 feet, get some angle on things, and get those shadows working. I love them shadows. Make that drama and depth and detail really happen. So yeah, this is the Milky Way here in Vermont, and again, it's a 30-second exposure, but to get the Milky Way, I had to bump my ISO up to 3200. So this is 3200 f2.8 and 30 seconds. So when you're shooting at 2.8 at ISO 3200, you don't need much light at all. You know, that's probably a second of light out of the Fat Max. And then I hit some on the road across the way just to light that up too. So I hit second on the tombstones and maybe 2 seconds on the tree, just to give it a little bit. So I really like taking pictures of the astrophotography and especially the Milky Way. And so I was in Chile last summer for the total solar eclipse, and I was in an area that was the darkest, one of the darkest places on Earth. And so, you know, I was there for the eclipse, but I'm thinking I got to get me some Milky Way. So I just drove out and through the mountains, and I pulled off in a spot that looked like a good place to pull off. There wasn't much to get in the foreground, but then as I was shining my light around, I saw this old stuffed chair sitting there, and I'm like, the astro gods are with me. You know, the astro gods just have to be with me tonight, because here is this wacky looking stuffed yellow, orange, whatever color chair out in the middle of the Milky Way. And so again, I want to get that angled light on it, and it looked pretty cool, and the Milky Way looked really cool, but it's going the wrong direction. Usually the Milky Way goes from the ground up to the left, and instead here it's going up to the right. So it's like, hey, that's pretty weird. But Milky Way is a great subject. So you just need to know where the galactic center is, and I use the app Photo Pills to figure that out. This is a sculpture park up in Middlebury, Vermont, and I love this sculpture. And during the day it looked cool, but I thought, man, I bet this looks really cool if I light it up, and again, it's pitch black out in the middle of this field, and get the Milky Way in behind. There were some clouds moving in and getting some light pollution low on the ground there, but still got the galactic center and the Black Horse Nebula. So if you look to the right, above and to the right, so like at a 45-degree angle from the head, you can see a horse there, the dark horse, sitting on its rump. So you can see its head at the top, then its back goes straight down, and the back legs go out to the right, and and the front legs go out to the front. So that's the Dark Horse Nebula. Anytime you get the Dark Horse Nebula in the shot, you've got the galactic center. So I've opened a gallery here in Vermont, and I just got a metal print of this one. I just hung it today, and it really looks nice. I mean, I don't frequently say my pictures look great, but this one's the subject matter and the lighting and everything just really worked on this one. So I'm really happy with that print that I just hung today. So I'll do star trails too and light things up. So this is in that same sculpture park, and this is a 3-hour exposure. So 30 seconds for each shot, and then so it's a 30 seconds, a second pause, and then another 30-second shot. So in 3 hours, I'm shooting 350 photos, and then stacking them together using a program called Star Stacks. And so it uses the rotation of the Earth to, as the stars are moving during the rotation of the Earth, it rotates around the North Star, Polaris. And so I made sure I put Polaris right in the middle of this sculpture, and just kicked a little light in from the right side, turned on the camera, and walked away, and came back 3 hours later, shooting with another camera. So just kicking that little light in from the side, getting that angular light just makes a huge difference. Sometimes I like to light up the whole scene. You can see the Dark Horse Nebula right in the middle of the scene there, and just this pond. I just loved the beauty of this pond, and so I wanted to light it up and get the reflections in the pond there, and get some stars reflecting in it. It's really hard to get the Milky Way to show up in a pond, but it can be a pretty cool challenge. And sometimes So I say I'm really great, and some people say I'm really lucky. So I was doing this Star Trails, and I turned the camera on, and I planned on doing a 2-hour shot, and I was over with my other camera, a couple hundred yards away, making some pictures in the other direction, and I enjoy seeing the International Space Station fly by. I get a thrill from that for some reason. I keep thinking they're going to give me a ride, but So I had my alert came on. The ISS is going to fly over. So I always stop to watch this thing, and it was a very long, bright flyover. So I'm watching it go over, and I'm thinking, hey, I bet I got that in that camera that's over there firing away. So like, yeah, I bet I got it. And then an hour later, it came by again lower, and I thought, yeah, I might have it in that shot too. So the next day when I processed the photos, it turns out the ISS flew right across Polaris, and it's like, man, am I good? Man, do I know how to plan a shot? Get this Polaris and the space station right in the same. It's like. So the guy I was with, I sent this photo to him and said, see what good planning does? And he's like, you're just a lucky ass. And I said, okay, you're right. So, but still the light painting made all the difference. If I didn't light up the shore on the other side, it would be a pretty boring photo. But I didn't want to light up the trees in the foreground. I liked having the silhouette in the foreground. That's what I was planning on. But then you've got the space station going right through Polaris. So it's like, how cool could that be? So again, a little light can be better than a lot of light. This was down in Chile, and the full arch of the Milky Way. And you can see the Dark Horse Nebula is upside down in Chile. So I just kicked a little light. This was the cabin I was staying in out in the mountains, and the valley down below was lit up. This was the night before the solar eclipse, so everybody was camping out and partying all night long. But I could have lit up the whole foreground there, but that would have been too much. You know, just the Milky Way was my subject, but I wanted to have just a little light from the cabin there. So little light is what it called for. So that's what I got. You know, another shot where it's just really easy to overpower the scene with too much light. So I back it off. This one I'm using this one actually I lit with my headlamp, because at ISO 3200 and f2.8 for the Milky Way, you don't need much light at all. So just the headlamp, and trying to keep it focused a little bit, aiming right out the middle there. And you know, sometimes I like having that light in the shot. So just like the shot I showed before of the covered bridge out in the middle of nowhere, a barn glowing down in the bottom would look pretty weird, I think. So I just put a little light across the grass, just put a stripe of light across the grass after I lit up the barn, and just, you know, lighting that ground sometimes just really adds to it, I think. Makes the shot look real. If it's just the barn glowing in the dark, it can be just a little weird. So this, you know, again, it's pitch black out there, and so the light doesn't need to look too bright. Just a little bit of light to make it feel really nice. And so anytime you're out shooting, and especially if you're trying to do the Milky Way, you don't want any ambient light. You don't want the moon, you know. So starting about Thursday night, the new moon is next Tuesday. So about Thursday night, you can get out there until 2 or 3 in the morning and get some nice dark skies. But street lights will kill you. You know, anything will kill you. So you know, I love trying to find barns that don't have any lights around them, and you know, lighting them up a little bit and getting that Milky Way behind it, and just seeing what I can do. And so this again is with my headlamp lit up, and I put the full CTO orange filter on the headlamp because it's really blue, and just walked along the fence during the exposure, during the 30 seconds, and it didn't take much light, just a little bit, and it can be a lot of fun. So this is an old schoolhouse, old one-room schoolhouse. So I shine my light inside to light up make the windows glow, kicked a little light on the outside, and then held my Fat Max, aimed it at the sky. So it was aiming up for probably 20 seconds, looking pretty cool. So, you know, it's kind of fun to get the light in the picture. That's me standing on the country road. So I hit my shutter, run down the road in the dark, shine my light up in the air, and have some fun with it. Try not to trip in the dark. I usually wait till the shot's over so I can turn my light on to walk back, but getting there in the dark can be a real challenge. So the star trails are a lot of fun, but they can look pretty similar unless you get something different in the foreground. So this little cover bridge and putting just a little bit of light on there. So again, this is about a 2-hour exposure, meaning a 30-second exposure. You know, so 2 shots a minute for 2 hours. So putting them together in the computer rather than doing them all in one shot. And you know, the whole key to all of this is finding some darkness and getting out your flashlight, seeing what's out there, seeing how you can light it, play with it, just see what flies by when you're lighting things. This is star trails, not aiming north, aiming straight east, and you get some weird things happening. But it's all just a matter of trial and error, and you know, see what happens, and just play with it and have fun. So that's about it for me. So you can see what gear I use there on my website, lorenphotos.com/gear. Normally I have night sky workshops here in Vermont, This week would have been, well, this week I was going to be in Iceland, but during the new moon in
Loren, you're muted for some reason.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I got muted there. Right during my promo. How'd that happen? So I was saying that I do night workshops up here in Vermont, and I do some in New York and New Jersey usually. Obviously not this year. Trying to do some down around the DC area also. Was planned for this year, but not going to happen now. But just getting out there anytime or inside, you don't even have to go outside. You know, the cool thing about shooting night shots is it's night every night. So, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a cloudy night or a clear night, you can get out and light up some things and blue hours there no matter what. So get out there and shoot. Any questions from anybody?
There is one question in the chat that do you use bulb mode while shooting star trails?
No, because your camera sensor will get too hot, and heat is what creates noise. So rather than do a very long, like hour-long or 2-hour-long exposure, you do a series of 30-second exposures, and you give your camera a second or two to process, and then fire another one. So you use an intervalometer, or some cameras have built-in intervalometers, and so you just tell it how long you want to shoot, or you can just tell it to start shooting, and I'll come back and turn it off later. I'll leave them out all night. I'll set a camera out all night, let it just fire all night till the batteries die, and it makes for really cool star trails. But you know, it's a whole bunch of 30-second shots put together with the free program that is all Star Tracks is also on my gear page. So there's a link to that free program that works on Mac or Windows.
What is able to mute now if you have any questions for Loren? I think Howard's dog has a question.
Yep. Okay, I
His
got
dog
a
has a
question.
question?
I got a kind of a couple questions that are closely related, and that is to do with the post-processing now. And I was thinking when you were showing the original pictures with the flowers,
Yeah.
it seemed, do you do any like dodge and burn touch-ups on these at all?
At all, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, after all, light painting is kind of like dodging, right? You're dodging in the light.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so, and then I was thinking the same thing. I mean, you partly answered this with the Oregon picture where you had to do multiple exposures. But it would seem like I was thinking about this when you had the picture of the waterfall in front of the restaurant in, I think that's in Woodstock. Is that right?
Yeah, in Quechee, yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
okay. So, you were saying you had to take the shot several times. So why don't you take, you know, sometimes you might get part of the shot right in one area and part in another area. Why don't you blend those together in Photoshop? You do that much of that?
You definitely could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or is it just, the question is kind of, does it work? Because sometimes good ideas don't pan out in reality.
Absolutely, that works, and I do that occasionally when I can't get the light right in one shot, you know, or like the Oregon situation where I can't light it all in one shot. I'll just light sections and then put them together. But it's more challenging and fun while I'm out there. Let's see if I can light this whole damn thing right now. You know, I spend too much time in front of a computer screen now. I don't want to do more. So if I can get it right in the camera, or at least close, then I don't have to spend time processing later. But sure, I mean, it's, you know, it's a lot easier like that waterfall with the, as you said, the restaurant behind it. to light up sections of it and put those sections together later. When the problem occurs when you have moving water, you have to do a lot more masking, and it's just a hell of a lot harder when something's moving like that, or the sky's moving fast. If you're just shooting something that's not moving at all, yeah, that's a piece of cake. Piece of cake.
Are there any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Loren.
There's a question in the chat.
Do you also use a star tracker?
Well, yes, but no. So star tracker, what a star tracker does is moves your camera at the speed of the rotation of the Earth, so you can do longer exposures for the stars. But you can't have something in the foreground because the camera is moving. So if you're actually, I got one more picture here. If you're doing star tracks of these whale tails that are the sculpture out in the middle of nowhere here in Vermont, you'll get the stars in focus, but the tails, everything else will move. So star trackers are great. I use it for eclipses when I shoot eclipses to track the eclipse to do a longer exposure. But unless I'm doing deep space photos, which I don't do a lot of because they all look alike, I want something in the foreground. And if I use a star tracker and my camera's moving, my foreground's gonna be blurred. So that's why I don't.
All right. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Loren. I think that will do it.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure